tell me about myself.
Ah.
Now, I was just telling her about this. See, when I was a student in Andhra University, I just joined the honors course. 12 months were over, it was about February-March period, end of the year, about to go for examination. I, just before that, 1 week or so, I came across this book called Search and Secret India by Paul Brunton in the library. I opened it and saw through several pictures. I saw several saints and all that, yogis. I was very much interested in that. I was previously attracted by Ramakrishna Vivekananda group. I used to go to Ramakrishna mission also regularly. And Vivekananda naturally attracted me, and Ramakrishna also. That was the background. And here, when I saw these saints and all that, I went through the book. I could not leave it, right from first page to the last page. There was the mention of Yogi Ramaya. And it is also mentioned that he comes from Nellore. That is the place where I studied and I came from. So naturally, it aroused my curiosity. I read the whole book, and particularly Ramana's chapter on Ramana, and Paul Brunton's realization, having a samadhi-like state, and what it is, he explains in spectacular English language, and about Yogi Ramaya. And a few weeks later, I felt that I should give up that studies and go back. Where to go? I heard about one yogi from whom spontaneously Omkara comes. So I thought I should go and meet him. I went home, I left the home also, and went in search of that yogi who is supposed to be living on a particular hill. But when I went there, all the way, walking for several miles, I found that he is not there. He has left that place and gone somewhere else. So I was puzzled. And finally I landed again in the house. And my people naturally were unhappy that I am leaving such a good course, which is coveted by several people and so on. And then somebody placed in my hand the small booklet, Who Am I? It was at that time 4 annas or something like that price. And in that the photograph of Ramana Maharshi was there. I did not know anything about Ramana. And after reading that, I felt that I should go and meet him. For a week or 10 days, I was just reading it, daily looking at his picture. And suddenly I felt I went without ticket. There was a meter gauge train going from that place where I was, Gudur, and from there to Tiruvannamalai. I reached there by evening, night it was. I went to the ashram. I met the Sarvadhikari, Niranjanananda Swami. And then I learnt that he was in the last stage. He was about to leave the body. Then I stayed for that day and saw that there was no interviews or anything like that. Everybody in a sorrowful mood, pensive mood, and then I came back. But coming back the next day or so, I saw in the newspapers that Ramana passed away. And after that, by a series of changes, I went back to the university, completed my studies, and came back to Nellore and joined a college there, private college, as a lecturer. And there I continued. I was teaching botany at that time. I was a botany BSc Honours. And having read about Yogi Ramaya already, I searched for his place, and then one day I went there. It's a small village, and there is a Bombay road there, and in that Bombay road, on the way we have to stop near a canal and walk from there 2 kilometers, and it is outskirts of the village itself, the ashram was there. At that time he was not there. I was told he has gone to Bangalore, and his mother was there. So I met her, talked with her, and came away. But later on, I met him personally, and I was very much attracted, because his picture that was in my mind was the picture given by Paul Brunton in his Search and Secret India. That is a highly realized soul already because of the description, and very peaceful and very majestic and all that. That was the description given there. He has described him. It seems he saw him for the first time. He appeared as if a Buddha was walking, and so serene, so peaceful, his mind and attire. And he came and sat near Ramana Maharshi, it seems. He described all that. And some of the incidents and the experience he had with him, he described there. And of course this particular description about his meeting Ramana and his experience with him, his conversation with him and all that, all this impressed me very much. And then I led an ordinary life, that is, been going to the college, teaching, and I had my family. The family means I was not married, but I had my father, mother, brothers, sisters, and all that. But I used to go often to him, almost every week. Saturday I used to go, stay with him for Sunday, and Monday I used to come back and join the college. Just half a rupee was the charge from Nellore to that particular place by bus. And when during holidays I used to go with him. He used to go to Bangalore and also Madras and stay with one Dr. T.N. Krishnaswamy. And sometimes he went to the Lord of the Seven Hills, Balaji temple there. And like that it went on. And he doesn't teach. His education was only elementary stage. He could read and write, but he is not a scholarly person or anything like that. And he did not recommend any reading of a particular Shastra or anything. He simply sat there. But somehow I liked him. I used to go, I also sit there in the ground. And rarely he used to carry a book on Yoga Vasishtha, the last volume, Nirvana Shatkam or something like that. And there the story of Chudala and Shikidwaja was there. And he used to ask me to read that, to him aloud. And in that way, for the first time, I became acquainted with Yoga Vasishtha. I did not know that it is such a great book. Later on I learnt how great it was in the tradition of Vedanta. So like that, my spiritual education began that. Not vocally, not lectures, no bhajans or anything like that. It was silent communication. Many years later, after reading several books and all these things, and thoroughly Ramana's literature and so on, I understood that spirituality doesn't lie in books, not in lectures. It's a direct communication, like the communication of a magnet to the iron filing. The magnet attracts the iron filing gets attached to it, and after some time the iron filing itself becomes a magnet. It also begins attracting other iron filings like that.
Were you the only student there at that time with him?
No students. He never encouraged. The name of Rama Ashram is there, and in the beginning it seems there were people coming and going, disciples and all that. But the time when I went there, the situation was such that he was not doing anything yoga or anything like that. He was simply doing vichara. He was in that state. I will tell you just now an incident. At the end, that is in 1962 or so, he suddenly appeared ill. He was not talking with anybody. He was not able to look after himself. So thinking that he is ill, I myself and another devotee went in a car taking him to Madras. And we went to the Dr. T.N. Krishnaswamy's house. And the doctor saw him, commented that he is very weak, and he took him to a nearby clinic. There was one Christian missionary clinic which provides facilities for doctors. So after settling down, then he asked him, because he was simply staring, not talking, and he was like that since 3 days. And we told all this to him, the doctor. So doctor seems to have got a doubt whether he was in a coma-like state or in a real normal consciousness. So I asked him, do you know where you are now? He immediately replied, we are everywhere. And then again he did not speak. There was no speech for another day. Only one day he stayed there. And the third day he left his body. The second day, one Muruganar came. Muruganar is a famous disciple of Ramana Maharshi. He wrote several poems on and so on and so forth. And he was at that time in Madras perhaps. He came having heard about him. And when he came, he recognized him easily. And he inquired by signs, doing well, like that. He simply did namaskar and stayed there for some time and went away. There was no conversation. But why I am telling this is he was in full consciousness, normal consciousness, but he was not speaking. Maybe he was aware that he was about to leave the body or anything like that. And the last answer, the vocal answer he gave to the doctor is very significant. But at that time I did not see any special meaning in that. Many years later, nearly perhaps 30 years later, I realized the meaning of what he was talking. He was at a different level of consciousness. He was everywhere. That is the answer he gave. And many years later, when he was going on a yatra, he met one Papa Ramdas of Kanchangarh. And he was supposed to be a famous saint, he was. And when he met him, he saw him and commented like this. And it was published in his book called In the Vision of God. See that Ramdas wrote 2 books, In the Quest of God, very famous, small booklet, how he surrendered himself to the Lord, it tells. And the second one, he went on a world tour, and his experiences and the meetings he had, it recorded in that particular, In the Vision of God. And there he says again that he is not in the normal condition. He is centered and pure awareness, he says, in that particular thing. His look is totally introverted. He comments on that. So that was the condition. And many years later, when he was in Ramanashram, Paramahamsa Yogananda, the author of Autobiography Yogi, also meets him there. And after meeting him, he goes back and tells his disciples, American disciples, had I stayed with him for another half an hour, perhaps I would not have come back to you, to America. Such was the fascination he felt. And later on, another occasion, just before he passed away, he told them, there are many jnanis in India, and after I leave the body, if you get any doubts, you can go and consult them. And the disciples told him, what is this? India is a big country, where are we to go and search for the jnanis? So you tell us some names, whom you think is self-realized, and if any necessity arises, we'll go and consult them. And it seems Yogi Ramaya's name was one of them. In 1960s, a letter came from Sri Dayamata, who was the president of Self-Realization Fellowship, the organization of Paramahamsa Yogananda. And there she requested his permission for her to come and stay in the ashram for a while. And we wrote back saying that she may come. But she did not come, but her vice president, one Swami Kriyananda, an American disciple of Paramahamsa Yogananda, he came. He stayed there for 4 days in Yogi Rama's ashram. He raised some questions, he received answers. And he came to that college where I was working, and we arranged a meeting, public meeting. In the meeting, somebody asked him, why did you come here? I came to see the greatest yogi in India, they said. What? Have you seen all the yogis in India? That you claim that you have come to see the greatest here? He said, you see, self-realization is the highest stage in spiritual quest. Whoever reaches that, we say he has reached the highest. Everest is the highest peak. Whoever reaches there, we say he reached the highest peak in the world. So also, here is a self-realized person. I came to see him. And that is why I said he is the greatest. There may be many others who are equally great or anything like that. And somebody else asked from the audience, how do you know that he is self-realized? Then he said this, when I met him, I felt that here is one who has realized this truth. And my guru also told me. And he narrated that particular incident and all that. So by the time I went, he was simply remaining as awareness. That is, he was everywhere. That was the state of mind in which he was, and naturally he was silent. And he did not encourage disciples, ashram building and all that. Very simple life he led, and very few people came. And that village people, they thought that he is an ordinary person. He looked like an ordinary person, carried on. Now when he was doing sadhana, he came by the Hatha Yoga route. He practiced Hatha Yoga, Kumbhaka, Pranayamas and all that severely. And he was also doing japa of a mantra, Tarak mantra he was initiated into. He was a Vishnu Bhakta. Anyway, I was terribly attracted by him, and till this last moment I was associated with him. And I believe that whatever spiritual progress I had, was entirely due to his blessing and the blessing of Ramana. And people ask me whether I have met Ramana Maharshi. Well, I went there, but physically speaking, evidently I have not met him. But spiritually speaking, I felt that he has drawn me into this. Because even though this Yogi Ramaya was associated. I never took mantra from him. I never tried to practice the Hatha Yoga practices which he did. On the other hand, this who am I inquiry stuck to me throughout, even then, and it continued. And I had a scientific background, that in the sense that I was involved in research and I published papers and all that. And this spirit of inquiry is something which attracted me very much. Spirit of scientific inquiry. Now in the case of Ramana Maharshi, that is the most impressive thing. This is an age of science. People do not believe gods and scriptures and all that. And they also don't like to give credence to gurus and all that. And Ramana is a unique guru in that he never talked about God much. He simply asked people to inquire who I am, or what this I am means. What is it? Everybody says I am. You inquire into that and discover the real nature of that I am, and all problems will be solved. People came to him with several problems, physical, mental, social and all that. But for everyone, well, he referred to this particular method only. You inquire who you are. You are saying I have suffering, I am this, that and all that. Who is that I? Inquire and find out. So this is a very scientific way of doing things. He doesn't ask people to read scriptures.
Booklet was about that?
That small booklet, Who Am I? That was the one which I was given first, and later on I read most of his literature and all that. But what I learned then was that he was a huge spiritual dynamo or magnet, and he attracted people. Whoever thought of him is somehow directly or indirectly were brought to his presence or into his contact directly or indirectly. Then I understood why I went there and how I went there. Just reading that Who Am I for several days, daily looking at his picture, well, that was the thing. He knows and he attracts like a spiritual magnet. This I learned after reading about several experiences of different people living in other countries. Just reading about him and then seeing his photo often, well, they were drawn to him by a series of incidents and so on. So he is a silent master. He did not give lectures going about now. He did not write books. His books were very, very simple. Who Am I and the Upadesara, all below 10 rupees. But the books written about him, well, they cost now 200, 300 and all that. See that? And the conversations he had with the disciples, very revealing. And they asked him questions about this inquiry method and various aspects of it. He has clarified in very great detail in different conversations. Several books have come which describe his method and so on and so forth, how to carry on this self-inquiry. And many, many years later, I gave up this job voluntarily and went over to Rishikesh. And there, Rishikesh, in the Himalayas, and there I went further to Uttarakasi, where I stayed for some time in a cave on the bank of that Bhagirathi river. And there I set up, I hit upon this particular method. People were going, brahmacharis were coming there. There were ashrams, those who are of traditional method, the Jnana Yoga method, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. They used to study Upanishads, Brahma Sutras and Bhagavad Gita for the entire year. The Guru there, a Pandit generally, and teach them these Shastras for 1 year it completes. And they have a big Bandara and then again they start. So Shravana is the method. Gradually it seems they believe that the mind will settle down into Manana and Nididhyasana. And there are others who talk about integral yoga. For example, Sivananda Ashram was there. Sivananda is highly educated and influenced by evidently by Vivekananda and other Ramatirtha and other lectures like that. And he talks about integral yoga. You mix up Bhakti yoga, Karma yoga and Raj yoga and also Jnana yoga, like that. And brahmacharis come, and come from Andhra Pradesh also. They come after reading books about yogis and rishis, caves, Himalayas and all that. But here they don't see that. Modern ashramas are not like that. But here there will be service, Karma yoga they say, do bhajan, and then yes, like that. Yoga asanas also they are there. And the Jnana yoga lectures and so on and so forth. And after some time they get disappointed and go away. And those who stay, well, they acclimatize themselves, either to reading of Shastras as Jnana Kailas Ashram is there, where they teach about all these things, Sanskrit scholars and all, and Sivananda ashram. There are many other ashrams. There are hundreds of ashrams there. And each has got its own way of approach. But seeing all this, there again the same sambar idli and all that, and the same working and meeting people. They get adjusted to that way of life. And later on become sannyasis, or they get disappointed and going away. So somehow I did not like all this. Now being brought up in the Ramana and the Yogi-Rama tradition, well, I thought inquiry is more important. So then I drew up this Atma Parisodhana Yaga Sadhana method, and when I came down, I started in Rishikesh itself. I was staying in Andhra Nirvana Ashram on the bank of Triveni Ghat. And there I started. Some Brahmacharis came, but not out of curiosity, to see what this Atma Parisodhana is. And I told them that they need not read and memorize Sanskrit slokas and all that. They have to read some Bhagavad Gita slokas enough. And the main thing is Yoga Vasishtha and Astavakra Gita and Tripura Rahasya. Such books I prescribed for their study, and I refer to them often. And Bhagavad Gita, of course. I also felt that asana siddhi is very important. Unless you have got to study asana, you cannot direct your mind inward. What is necessary here is an introverted mind, a concentrated mind, a purified mind is necessary. After all, the truth they are describing in Bhagavad Gita, Upanishads and all that, the Satchidananda Parabrahman is everywhere. But how is it that people are not able to discover this? It is because the instrument by which we learn things is not perfect. The mind is very, very weak, very, very distracted, no concentration, vikshepa state it is an impure state. And such a mind will not be able to cognize this truth, even though it is so widely prevalent. So it has to be trained properly, and these qualities have to be acquired. And of course, Swami, the Jagadguru Shankaracharya lays down the four qualifications which one should acquire. That is, the first thing is one should have viveka and vairagya. And viveka means to distinguish between what is real and what is unreal, what is true and what is untrue. If you have this, you go after the truth and leave the untruth. You go after the real and leave the unreal. This is vairagya. It automatically comes. They are mutually dependent. That is viveka and vairagya. If you have viveka, you will automatically have vairagya. If you have vairagya, that means you have some viveka to some extent or other. So this should be strengthened. That is, you must have full understanding of what real is, what unreal is. And people say that is all real. The world is real. The body is real. But then here the question is, what is the standard? What is the measuring yard by which you know what is real or what is unreal? And the rishis have said, whatever is present in bhuta, bhavishyat, vardhamana kala, in all the three kalas, that is real. If something is present in one kala and is not present in another period, that cannot be real. So that is it. If you use that yardstick, you find everything has got a beginning and end, including the sun and the planets, solar system, including the galaxies. How is the astronomers are describing. Now for example, take me. I was not here, this body was not here 100 years ago. 100 years hence it will not be there. In between it appears to be doing so many things. How can this be real, they are asking. So their criteria for judging whether a particular thing is real or unreal is to see whether it is for all time. But is there anything like that? They claim that they have discovered such a thing. And they say that the Satchidananda Parabrahman is a wonderful power, a very extraordinary power, infinite knowledge, infinite love, infinite, everything is infinite about it. And such a thing exists, that alone is real. It has neither beginning nor end, and it simply exists. And it is pure awareness, and it is full of bliss also. So the goal of life according to them is to achieve that particular state, a superconscious state, where you get rid of the idea that you are a body-mind complex, and instead you realize that you are part of that Satchidananda Parabrahman. You are that Brahman. So this is the realization they want. And once you realize this superconscious state, well, your life will be totally transformed. And they cite, of course, the Puranic examples of Lord Krishna, Lord Rama, and so on. And the general belief that these things, this Vedanta, is for the sannyasis and brahmacharis living in ashrams, caves and all that is not correct. Because Lord Krishna himself is a Grihastha. He is a bigger Grihastha than all the Grihasthas we find here. And Arjuna is a Grihastha. And Vasishtha Maharshi is a Grihastha who taught Sri Ramachandra. The whole of Yoga Vasishtha is about this consciousness and Brahman only. So repeatedly, story after story, the heroes realize this truth and lo, they become something different. And Vasishtha is exhorting Ramachandra to become like that. You are the consciousness, you are pure awareness, be that. And then you carry on your work as usual. So they never say that one should become a sannyasi, brahmachari, anything, or should go and live in a cave or ashram or anything like that. They only insist on saying, just inquire in who you are. And you are having a long identification with the body-mind complex. Get rid of that. Instead, you identify yourself with a greater truth which is there in you, doing all mysterious things, and so on. So, this is the teaching I used to emphasize. And in the other ashrams, they insist on Sanskrit learning, and then learning the Shastras for 6 years. 3 years learning Sanskrit, 3 years learning Shastras, and then they say the further training should begin. But here we are saying, no, you have direct access to the Sachidananda Parabrahman, because it is there with you all the while, right from your birth and all around you. And it is nearer than the nearest, says the Upanishad. So why go through all those things? Simply inquire. So self-inquiry is the main theme in this. It is a yoga of self-inquiry. And for 7 days they stay with me. Their daily routine is regulated, and they have to yuktahara viharasya, says Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna. So they have to get up early morning at 3 a.m. and start work at 3:30, and the methods taught are based on the Shastra only, but it is practical course where they have to practice for hours together. And the diet is restricted to milk, fruits and such other things which are uncooked and apakvahara and so on. So for them, this type of life is not there in the different ashrams there. So it appeared very peculiar. Only a few brahmacharis came, 4 disciples came to see, not to learn, to see and challenge me. And yes. And after seeing this, I used to combine science also. I used to have a microscope, show them cells and talk about protoplasm and all that. So this is how it started. But later on more people came, and people, sannyasis also came, and they saw that it is very meaningful and very difficult also, because I was insisting on asana siddhi. And in the beginning they said, what is the use of sitting and all that. But later on, those who practiced and stayed, well, they understood how it stabilizes the mind, and it is very useful. Because by just sitting for 3 hours, you are arresting all the 10 indriyas. Shama and Dhamma is being partially achieved. That is, only the mind is left out. It wanders, no doubt. But all the other things you are arrested. The karmendriyas 5 and the gnanendriyas 5 are arrested. And that itself is an advantage for a sadhaka. And then the Panchakosha Vishleshana was also introduced. And of course, throughout, the emphasis is on the inquiry, who am I? So it begins with who am I inquiry and continues throughout the period. Because once you understand intellectually that you are not this body-mind complex, but something divine, a mysterious, intelligent power that is even now operating in your body, doing all physiological activities, well, you have to stabilize that particular thing, and Dehatma Bhavana must be given up, and Chaitanya Atma Bhavana must be strengthened. How to do that is the remaining course. How to purify the mind, how to concentrate it, how to improve your willpower, and how to make use of it for achieving this particular thing. What is that? Getting rid of Dehatma Bhavana and acquiring this Chaitanya Atma Bhavana. Swami Vivekananda says, the first step in spirituality is to know that you are not this body. And attachment to the body is compared to catching hold of a crocodile crossing a river, according to Ramana. And according to Shankaracharya also, the same thing. He gives the fellow who goes on to the back of a crocodile to cross a river. What happens to him? The crocodile will swallow him. So this is how they used to say. That is, they are strongly against this Dehatma Bhavana. They want that a sadhaka should try his best to get rid of that. And not only that, he must try to identify yourself with this Sachidananda Parabrahman or Chit Shakti or Chaitanya Shakti or intelligent power that is there. I think personally that science is a very good instrument for propagating Vedanta. And science, some recent discoveries of science bring science very close to Vedanta. That is why I called it Vajnanika Vedanta.
Yes.
And I bring in facts discovered in with the cell biology, microbiology, astronomy and so on and so forth. In fact, I go to the extent of saying that modern science is something like modern Bhagavata. In Bhagavata, Lord Krishna's Leelas are explained and the various avatars of Lord Vishnu are explained. But here, the Creator's wonders are explained by the scientists. The scientists are atheists, most of them, particularly the European and Western scientists. But then, they are revealing the greatness of the Lord, the Creator, and showing how great this Sachidananda Parabrahman is. So in that way, science became very attractive to me. And my background, having done some research and having a full idea and fascination for spirit of inquiry and research, has helped me to further pursue that way.
Sure.
I generally first try to clarify this, what I am is. Now everybody says I am. But what is this I am? And immediately they point out a body and a name they give. They talk about male, female and so on. The characteristics of the body they attribute to this I am. So let us inquire as to what this I am is. Now every object in this world has got 4 characteristics. A name and a form. And it exists. And we are aware of its existence. Existence and awareness are there. But these 2 characteristics, nobody looks at them separately. They are so abstract. But now suppose we look at all the 4 characteristics in every object we come across. And let us see what happens. Now there is a table here. The name is there and it has got a particular form and it exists. I am aware of its existence. And umpteen things here. All these objects, every one of them, the names and forms are changing. But every one is associated with existence and awareness, existence and awareness. This is what they call Sat and Chit in Sanskrit. So you find that this Sat and Chit is there in the entire room here and also outside. And because of that, we are able to recognize different names and forms. Now I look at my own body. I've got several organs here. Now take for example the hand, 5 fingers are there. Little finger, ring finger, big finger and so on, thumb and so on. Each has got a name and a form. It exists. I am aware of its existence. It exists. I am aware of its existence. It exists. I am aware of its existence. Like that, you find existence and awareness is spread all over the body. And because of that, I am able to recognize the various parts. And then I go inside. Inside my body, you have got a heart, lungs and so on and so forth. We see the pictures, we recognize them. Names and forms are there for these inner organs. And that exists and awareness also is there. Sat and Chit is spreading outside, inside my body. And that is how I recognize the presence of so many organs with the different names and forms. Now I go and study the mind full of ideas, thoughts are coming, thoughts are going, meaningful, meaningless, neutral and so on. But every thought has got a name and a form. I see my friend, how do I know? His form is there. And his name I know. And it exists. I am aware of its existence. It is a mental form. So also in every thought. So the Sat and Chit or existence and awareness spread not only in the body outside and inside, but in the mind also, associated with every thought that arises there. Now we finally come to this I am. Everybody says I am, and if I ask anybody, where are you now? He will say, naturally I am inside the body. So this is the general idea. But when you look at this I am, there is no particular form for it. No particular name. Everybody says I am, I am, I am. So, no particular name or form can be attributed to this I am. But it exists and we are aware of its existence. Everybody says I exist, I am aware of my existence. When you say I am for any particular sentence,